What happens when one of the most outspoken comedians in the world walks onto a live daytime talk show and refuses to play along? Especially when the questions start getting personal. Make sure to subscribe to Talk Show Fallout and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The audience is already warmed up, clapping and buzzing as the camera sweeps across the studio. There's that familiar daytime energy, light, cheerful, but with an edge of anticipation. The hosts are seated at the table, papers in front of them, exchanging quick glances as they prepare to introduce the next segment. Joy leans slightly forward, smiling toward the camera, her tone calm but sharp underneath. So, our next guest is someone who never really holds back. Whether it's on stage, in interviews, or online, you always know where he stands. A few audience members chuckle softly, already sensing what kind of segment this might turn into. Another host jumps in, lighter tone. He's starring in a new project, but also, let's be honest, he's been in the headlines quite a bit lately. Joy nods, lips tightening just a bit. Yes, for multiple reasons. The pause lingers just long enough to be noticed. And here he is, Kevin Hart. The audience erupts into applause as Kevin walks out, smiling, waving, that familiar confident energy. He shakes hands with a couple of hosts, gives a quick playful bow toward the audience, then takes his seat. Thank you. I appreciate that, Kevin says, settling in. Joy gives a polite smile. Kevin, welcome. Happy to be here, he replies, looking around the table. I see a lot of faces that look like they've got questions ready. The audience laughs. One of the co-hosts jumps in quickly, trying to keep things light. Well, first of all, congratulations on the new project. Kevin nods. Thank you. We worked hard on it. It's one of those things where you really put your heart into it, you know? Absolutely, she says. And people are excited. Joy tilts her head slightly. Before we get into that, though, I think a lot of people are also curious about some of the comments you've made recently. There's a subtle shift in the room. Kevin doesn't interrupt. He leans back slightly, hands together, listening. Joy continues, tone still measured but firmer now. You've been pretty vocal, especially about criticism, about cancel culture, about people coming after you, as you put it. Some people feel like you dismiss accountability when you talk about that. A small murmur ripples through the audience. Kevin nods slowly. Okay. Joy presses gently. So the question is, do you think sometimes you avoid responsibility by turning everything into a joke or blaming the audience? Another host glances sideways, sensing the tension rising faster than expected. Kevin smiles, but it's tighter now. Well, that's a strong way to start. Light laughter from the audience, but it's nervous. He continues, still calm. I don't think I avoid responsibility. I think I address things in the way I know how, which is honestly. And yeah, sometimes that includes humor, because that's who I am. Joy leans in slightly. But humor can also be a shield. Kevin tilts his head. Or it can be a tool. There's a pause. The audience reacts with a mix of soft claps and murmurs. Another host quickly tries to soften the moment. I think what Joy is getting at is, do you feel like public figures have a different level of responsibility when they speak? Kevin nods. Of course we do. I've never said we don't. But what I'm saying is, there's a difference between being responsible and being told how to think. Joy jumps in. But nobody's telling you how to think. People are reacting to what you say. Kevin looks directly at her now. Right. And I'm reacting to their reaction. The audience gives a small ooh. Joy doesn't back down. But when people say something is hurtful, dismissing it as they're too sensitive, that's not really engaging with the issue, is it? Kevin exhales slightly, still composed. See, that's where I think things get twisted. Because I never said people can't feel how they feel. What I said is, you don't get to control how I express myself. A few audience members clap. Joy raises an eyebrow. But words have impact. Kevin nods. They do. And intent matters too. The tension is building now, not explosive but definitely noticeable. One of the co-hosts leans forward, trying to balance things. Kevin, can you understand why some people feel like comedians sometimes cross lines and then hide behind, it's just a joke? Kevin turns slightly toward her. I get that. I really do. But here's the thing. Comedy has always been about pushing boundaries. That's not new. Joy cuts in quickly. But society changes. Kevin immediately responds. And comedy changes with it. But it doesn't disappear. The audience reacts again, louder this time. Joy's tone sharpens just a little. But evolving means listening. And sometimes it feels like you're more focused on defending yourself than actually listening. There's a noticeable pause. Kevin looks at her for a second longer this time. Then he leans forward. I think that's unfair. The room goes quieter. Joy doesn't smile now. Why? Kevin's voice is still controlled, but there's more weight behind it. Because you're assuming I'm not listening. Just because I don't agree doesn't mean I didn't hear you. A few claps break out. Joy responds immediately. But when your response is always defensive, Kevin cuts in, still respectful but firmer. It's not defensive. It's responsive. That lands. The audience reacts, some clapping, some murmuring. Another host steps in quickly, sensing things tightening. Okay, let's take a breath for a second. She smiles, trying to reset the tone. Kevin, let's talk about your new project for a moment. Kevin glances at her, then back at Joy. No, it's okay. We can stay here. The audience reacts again, louder now. Joy crosses her arms slightly. All right, Kevin continues. Because this is the conversation people are actually having, right? Not just about me, about everything. The energy in the room has clearly shifted now. It's no longer just a promotional interview. It's a debate. And everyone knows it. Kevin looks around the table, then back at Joy. What I think happens a lot is, people hear something they don't like, and instead of discussing it, they try to shut it down. Joy responds quickly. Or they call it out. Kevin nods. Calling it out is fine. Trying to silence it, that's different. A mix of applause and murmurs fills the studio. Joy leans forward again, voice steady but clearly engaged. But who's silencing you? You're here, you're speaking, you have a massive platform. Kevin doesn't hesitate. And I'm using it. But that doesn't mean there aren't attempts to shut people down when they say something unpopular. Another host interjects softly. I think what people are trying to understand is where the line is. Kevin looks at her. The line is different for everyone. Joy shakes her head slightly. That's exactly the problem. And just like that, the conversation edges even closer to something bigger. Sharper, more personal, more intense. The audience can feel it. And this is only the beginning. The room holds that tension for a second. Not loud, not chaotic, but thick enough that everyone feels it. A few audience members shift in their seats, some leaning forward, others glancing at each other like they're watching something unfold in real time. Kevin keeps his posture forward, elbows lightly on the table now, clearly engaged. Joy sits upright, composed, but there's no mistaking that she's fully locked into this moment. Kevin speaks first, voice steady but firmer than before. Why is it a problem that the line is different for everyone? That's reality. We don't all think the same, we don't all feel the same. Joy responds immediately, almost cutting in. No, the problem is when people use that as an excuse to ignore harm. A soft wave of sounds comes from parts of the audience. Kevin nods slowly. And who decides what harm is? Joy doesn't hesitate. Society does. Culture evolves. What was acceptable 20 years ago isn't always acceptable now. Kevin tilts his head slightly. Okay, but society isn't one voice. It's millions of voices. So which ones are we listening to? There's a pause. The audience reacts again, some clapping, some murmuring in agreement. One of the co-hosts jumps in, trying to mediate. I think what Joy is saying is that there's a growing awareness about certain issues, and people expect public figures to reflect that awareness. Kevin turns toward her, nodding respectfully. I hear that. I really do. But awareness shouldn't mean fear. And right now, a lot of people are scared to say anything because they're worried about backlash. Joy leans forward again, her tone tightening. Or maybe they're just being asked to be more thoughtful. Kevin gives a small smile, but it's sharper now. Thoughtful according to who? The audience lets out another collective reaction, louder this time. Joy exhales through her nose slightly, clearly not backing off. According to basic decency, Kevin. It's not that complicated. Kevin's eyebrows lift just a bit. See, when you say basic decency, that sounds simple. But in practice, people don't agree on what that means. A co-host nods cautiously. That's true. Joy turns slightly toward her. But there are certain things that are universally understood to be offensive. Kevin shakes his head lightly. Not as universal as you think. The room reacts again, a mix of agreement and discomfort. Joy's voice sharpens just a little more. So you're saying there are no standards? Kevin answers quickly. No, I'm saying the standards are constantly shifting. And if you expect people to never misstep while those standards are changing, that's unrealistic. A few audience members clap. Joy counters right away. But acknowledging a misstep is different from dismissing criticism. Kevin leans in slightly more now. And I've acknowledged things. But at some point, it feels like no matter what you say, it's not enough. That lands heavier. There's a quieter reaction from the audience. Less applause, more listening. Another host steps in, softer tone. Kevin, do you feel like you're held to a different standard because of your platform? Kevin nods. Absolutely. And I accept that. That comes with the territory. But what I don't accept is the idea that I'm supposed to be perfect. Joy responds quickly. No one's asking for perfection. Kevin looks directly at her. It feels like that sometimes. There's a brief silence. Joy studies him for a second before speaking again. Or maybe it feels like accountability. The audience lets out a small, "Oh." Kevin doesn't smile this time. Accountability is fine. But there's a difference between accountability and constant punishment. That shifts the tone again. A co-host quietly says, almost under her breath but still audible, "That's an interesting point." Joy turns slightly toward Kevin, her expression more serious now. "What do you mean by punishment?" Kevin exhales, choosing his words carefully. "I mean this cycle where someone says something, people react, they apologize, and then it just keeps going. It never ends. It's like there's no room to move forward." The audience is quieter now, more focused. Joy replies, measured but firm. Because sometimes the apology doesn't feel genuine. Kevin nods once. Or maybe people have already decided it's not, no matter what you say. A few audience members clap again. Joy shakes her head slightly. "That sounds like you're putting the responsibility on the audience." Kevin responds immediately. "I'm saying it goes both ways." Another host quickly interjects, sensing the back and forth tightening. "Okay, let me ask this. Is there a way to have these conversations without it turning into this constant conflict?" Kevin glances at her, then back at Joy. "Yeah, by actually listening to each other instead of trying to win." There's a small but noticeable reaction, a mix of nods and murmurs. Joy raises an eyebrow. "And you don't think that's what we're doing right now?" Kevin pauses for a second. Then he says calmly but pointedly, "I think we're trying, but I also think there's a lot of assuming going on." Joy's expression tightens slightly. "Assuming what?" Kevin leans back just a little, but his eyes stay locked on her. "Assuming intent. Assuming that if someone says something you don't like, it must come from a bad place." Joy responds quickly. "Sometimes it does." Kevin nods. "Sometimes. But not always." The audience reacts again, a mix of agreement and hesitation. A co-host tries to lighten the tone slightly. "I feel like we're getting into a bigger philosophical debate here." Kevin lets out a short laugh. "Because it is bigger than me. That's what I'm trying to say." Joy doesn't smile. "But you were part of it." Kevin nods. "Of course I am. And I'm willing to have the conversation." Clearly. He gestures lightly around the table. The audience claps briefly. Joy leans forward again, voice steady but more direct now. "Then let's have it honestly. Do you think you've ever crossed a line?" There's a noticeable pause. Kevin doesn't answer immediately this time. He looks down for a second, then back up. "Yeah," he says simply. The room shifts again, quieter, more attentive. Joy follows up quickly. "Then why is it so hard to just say that without turning it into a bigger argument about everyone else?" Kevin's tone stays calm, but there's more weight behind it now. "Because every time I say it, it doesn't stop there. It becomes something else. It becomes this whole narrative about who I am as a person." Joy responds, her voice rising just slightly. "But that's part of being a public figure." Kevin's voice rises a notch too, still controlled, but clearly more intense now. "And I accept that. But I don't accept being reduced to one moment or one mistake." The audience reacts louder, a mix of applause and surprised murmurs. One of the hosts quickly reaches out a hand slightly, trying to steady the moment. Okay, but Kevin continues, not aggressively, but with conviction. "People grow. People change. But online, it's like you're frozen in whatever people decided about you at your worst." Joy cuts in, matching his energy now. "Or maybe people are holding you accountable for patterns, not just one moment." That lands hard. The audience reacts sharply, a louder, "oh" this time. Kevin goes quiet for a brief second. Then he leans forward again, slower, more deliberate. "See, now that's where I have a problem." The room goes still. Joy meets his gaze, unflinching. "Why?" Kevin's voice lowers slightly, but it's more intense than before. "Because now you're not just talking about what I said, you're talking about who I am." And just like that, The conversation crosses into something deeper, more personal, and far more explosive than where it started. The moment Kevin says that, the entire tone of the table shifts. There's no laughter now. No quick reactions. Just that quiet, charged pause where everyone knows something bigger just got said. Joy doesn't look away. I am talking about who you are, Kevin. You're not just a comedian on a stage. You're a public figure with influence. A few audience members murmur, some nodding, others clearly bracing for what's coming next. Kevin leans back slightly, exhales through his nose, then leans forward again, slower this time, more controlled. See, that right there, that's where I think things go off track, he says. Because influence doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean I stop being human. Joy responds immediately, her voice steady but sharper now. No one said you have to be perfect. But when you have influence, your words carry more weight. That's just reality. Kevin nods once. I agree with that. I've always agreed with that. But what I don't agree with is the idea that one interpretation of my words becomes the only interpretation allowed. The audience reacts, a mix of claps and murmurs. Joy tilts her head slightly. But when a large group of people are telling you something is harmful, doesn't that matter? Kevin answers quickly. It matters. But it's not the only thing that matters. That gets a louder reaction, some applause, some audible disagreement. One of the co-hosts raises her hand slightly, trying to create space. Okay, let's slow this down for a second. But Joy continues, not raising her voice, just holding firm. So what else matters more than people telling you they're hurt? Kevin turns fully toward her now. The full context. The intent. The conversation as a whole. Not just one clip, one quote, one moment taken out of everything else. A few audience members clap. Joy responds without missing a beat. But impact is what people feel, not what you intended. Kevin nods. Impact matters. I've said that. But if you ignore intent completely, then you're judging people without understanding them. That lands heavily. There's a brief silence before the audience reacts again, this time more split. Another host leans in, voice softer, trying to bridge the gap. Is there a way to balance both? Intent and impact. Kevin glances at her. There has to be. Otherwise, what are we doing? Just reacting without actually talking to each other. Joy shakes her head slightly. But Kevin, when people do talk, when they explain why something is hurtful, it often feels like your response is to push back instead of reflect. Kevin's expression tightens, not angry, but clearly more serious now. Because sometimes the reflection people want isn't reflection, it's agreement, he says. The audience reacts, louder this time. Joy leans forward, her tone rising just a notch. Or maybe it's accountability. Kevin responds immediately. And maybe it's control. That gets a strong reaction, a mix of applause and a few audible gasps. One of the co-hosts quickly jumps in. Okay, but the energy has already tipped. Joy doesn't back down. Control? You think people asking you to be mindful is control. Kevin gestures lightly with his hand, still composed but clearly fired up. I think when people say, you can only say this, you can't say that, you have to think this way or you're wrong. Yeah, that starts to feel like control. Joy shakes her head more firmly now. No, that's called standards. Kevin leans in again. Whose standards? The audience reacts instantly. Joy answers, her voice stronger now. Society's standards. The ones that evolve as we learn more. Kevin nods slowly, but there's a sharper edge to his voice now. And who decides when those standards are final? Because it seems like they change depending on who's speaking. A louder murmur spreads through the crowd. Joy responds, clearly more animated now. They change because we grow. That's not a bad thing. Kevin doesn't hesitate. I didn't say growth is bad. I'm saying the way we handle that growth, the way we treat people during it, that's where the problem is. A co-host quietly says, that's fair. Joy turns slightly toward her, then back to Kevin. So what would you prefer? That people stay silent when they're offended. Kevin shakes his head. No. Speak up. Say what you feel. I'm all for that. But don't act like your perspective is the only one that exists. The audience claps again, louder, more divided now. Joy's voice tightens. But when enough people are saying the same thing, it becomes the dominant perspective. Kevin replies instantly. Dominant doesn't mean correct. That line hits. There's a loud mix of reactions, applause, a few surprised sounds, even a couple of people shaking their heads. One of the hosts tries again to step in. All right, let's just... But Joy cuts in, her tone now clearly more forceful than before. So what you're saying is that all of these people are wrong, and you're right. Kevin shakes his head immediately. No. What I'm saying is, it's not that simple. Joy presses. Then explain it. There's a pause. Kevin looks around the table, then back at her. People are complex, he says. Conversations are complex. But what happens now is everything gets reduced to sides. You're either right or wrong, good or bad, acceptable or canceled. There's no room in the middle anymore. The audience quiets again, listening closely. Joy responds, slightly slower this time. Or maybe the middle is where people have been hiding to avoid taking a clear stance. A few audience members react to that, some nodding, others murmuring disagreement. Kevin's jaw tightens just a bit. See that right there, he says. That's what I'm talking about. You're framing it like if someone doesn't fully agree with you, they must be avoiding something. Joy doesn't look away. Or maybe they are. The tension spikes again. Another host finally raises her voice slightly, stepping in more assertively. Okay, we're clearly in a very passionate discussion right now. But Kevin continues, not louder, just more direct. No, let's stay here. Because this is important. The audience reacts, a mix of claps and anticipation. Kevin turns back to Joy, his tone now more deliberate than ever. I'm not your enemy. I'm not against growth. I'm not against accountability. What I'm against is this idea that there's only one way to be acceptable. Joy responds immediately. And I'm not saying there's only one way. I'm saying there are lines. Kevin nods. And I'm saying those lines aren't always as clear as people pretend they are. The audience reacts again, louder, more divided than at any point so far. Joy leans forward, her voice now carrying real intensity. Then maybe it's your responsibility to learn where those lines are instead of challenging them every time. That lands hard. The room goes quiet. Kevin doesn't answer right away. He looks at her, really looks at her, then leans in slightly, his voice lower, but sharper than it's been the entire time. And maybe it's not your place to decide them for everyone else. A collective ripples through the audience. The hosts exchange quick glances. The energy is no longer just tense. It's on the edge of something that could tip in any direction. And for the first time, it feels like this isn't just a debate anymore. It's personal. That line hangs in the air. You can actually feel the shift in the room. Not just tension anymore, but that moment where everyone realizes this has gone further than a typical daytime discussion. There's a brief silence. No one jumps in right away. Joy sits back slightly, her lips pressed together, eyes still on Kevin. For a second, it looks like she's deciding whether to push even further or pull things back. Kevin leans back too, but his posture stays alert. He's not disengaging, just giving the moment space. The audience is quiet, watching closely. One of the co-hosts finally steps in, voice calm but firm, clearly trying to stabilize things. Okay, I think we can all agree this is a passionate conversation. A few light chuckles break the silence, easing the pressure just a little. She continues, turning slightly toward Kevin. And I think it's important that we're having it. These are real conversations people are having at home. Kevin nods. Exactly. Joy exhales, her tone shifting, still serious but less sharp now. And I don't disagree with that. I really don't. But I think where we differ is, I believe public figures have a responsibility to be more aware, not less. Kevin listens, then responds more calmly than before. I hear you, and I agree with being aware. I just don't agree with the idea that awareness should come with fear. The audience reacts, softer this time, more reflective than reactive. Joy nods slowly. And I don't think it should be fear. I think it should be consideration. Kevin gives a small nod back. That's fair. There's a noticeable release in the room. Not a full resolution, but a shift out of confrontation. Another host smiles, taking the opportunity to redirect. Okay, I think we just solved the internet. The audience laughs, grateful for the lighter moment. She continues, Kevin, let's talk about your project for a second before we run out of time. Kevin smiles slightly. Yeah, we should probably do that. The tension doesn't disappear completely, but it softens enough to move forward. They briefly touch on his new project, quick, surface level compared to everything that just happened. Kevin answers professionally, but you can tell his mind is still partly in the conversation. Joy listens, nodding, but she's quieter now. As the segment wraps up, the host turns to the camera. Kevin Hart, everyone. The audience applauds, louder than usual but mixed. Some people are clapping for the conversation, some for Kevin, some just because it's ending. Kevin stands, shakes hands with the hosts. There's a brief moment where he and Joy face each other again. It's not hostile, but it's not casual either. Joy gives a small nod. Thank you for coming. Kevin nods back. Appreciate you. No hug, no extra warmth, just mutual acknowledgement. He waves to the audience and walks off stage. The applause fades as the show transitions to the next segment, but the energy lingers. Even as the hosts move on, you can see it in their faces. That look of that just happened. Backstage, the mood is different. Staff members are talking in low voices. Some are replaying moments on monitors, others exchanging looks like they just witnessed something bigger than a normal interview. One producer shakes their head slightly. That escalated fast. Another responds, yeah, but it was real. Kevin is seen walking down the hallway, still composed, but quieter now. A couple of staff members nod at him as he passes. He nods back, focused, not stopping. In another area, Joy is speaking with a producer. Her tone is calm, but you can tell she's still processing. It wasn't supposed to go that far, she says. The producer shrugs slightly. Live TV. She nods. Yeah, live TV. Within minutes of the segment ending, clips start circulating online. Short clips. Out-of-context quotes. Reaction captions. Kevin Hart claps back. Joy Behar shuts him down. Talk show explodes on live TV. On platforms like YouTube, X, and TikTok, the debate spreads fast. People pick sides almost instantly. Some users praise Kevin. He stayed calm. He made valid points. He didn't let himself get boxed in. Others defend Joy. She held him accountable. She asked the right questions. He avoided giving a straight answer. And then there are those pointing out the bigger picture. This is exactly the conversation we need. Both of them had points. Why does everything have to turn into sides? Clips get millions of views within hours. Comment sections explode. Debates spill into threads, videos, reactions. Even other public figures start weighing in, some subtly, some directly. Later that day, entertainment outlets begin covering it. Panels replay the exchange, breaking down specific moments. Was Kevin defensive? Was Joy too aggressive? Did the show go too far, or not far enough? The conversation keeps evolving. By the evening, Kevin posts a short message. Good conversation today. Not everything has to end in agreement to be worth having. It gets shared thousands of times. Not long after, Joy addresses it briefly on the next show. These conversations are important, she says, even when they're uncomfortable. And just like that, what started as a routine interview turns into something much bigger. A moment people keep talking about long after the cameras stopped rolling. The audience at home is still debating. The clips are still circulating. The conversation is still ongoing. And now it shifts to you. What did you think? Was Kevin right to push back? Was Joy right to challenge him? Or was the truth somewhere in the middle? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to Talk Show Fallout for more real talk show stories.